Hi everyone, I'm Sangeetha Carmona and welcome to Social Emotional Learning series. Today I'm presenting some critical information on social emotional learning and henceforth I'll be referring to it as SEL. The Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, CASEL, is a trusted source for knowledge about high-quality, evidence-based SEL. CASEL supports educators and policy leaders and enhances the experiences and outcomes for all K12 students. In part one of this series, we will start with what is CASEL and what is CASEL 5. SEL is an integral part of education as well as human development. SEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals. They also feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. Throughout this webinar, I'll be using resources from the CASEL website. Remember, these are free to use. By the end of this webinar, you will be able to identify the 5 competencies of CASEL, which are known as the CASEL 5. You'll be able to reflect on how you personally learn the CASEL 5, and you will dig deeper into the CASEL 5 and explore how to use this competency. The CASEL 5 addresses 5 broad and interrelated areas of competence and highlights illustrative examples for each, and we're going to go over those in my workshop. So we're going to take a look at self-awareness. If you look at the orange side on the left, then self-management. I can highlight these for you. So here's your self-awareness, and then you have self-management, then responsible decision making, relationship skills, and social awareness. Now these 5 are placed in a circle since we don't learn these skills in order. The CASEL 5 can be taught and applied at various developmental stages from childhood to adulthood and across diverse cultural contexts. Many school districts, states, and countries have used the CASEL 5 to establish preschool to high school learning standards and competencies that show students what they need to know and be able to do to increase their success academically, in health and wellness, engagement with school, and have fulfilling careers. So we're going to take a look at this systematic framework and look at some examples and see how it connects to the classroom. So why is SEL important in the classroom? Let's take a look and watch a video about the importance of integrating SEL in your classroom.
Alongside families and communities, schools play a significant role in supporting young people's social and emotional development. Setting aside time to teach a set of skills in a specific environment is critical, but so is making sure SEL is woven into daily school life. This integration falls into 3 categories: academic mindset, or how students think about their own learning; aligned SEL and academic objectives, or the content students learn; and interactive pedagogy, or how students learn.
When we think about academic integration of SEL, we think about building our students' mindsets as learners. We think about integrating social and emotional competence standards into our academic standards so the lesson is actually accomplishing both. And we think about the way in which we do that.
When a teacher understands that their job isn't solely to teach academic content, but to really help a student grow in their learning by expressing care and concern, by providing support, and communicating high expectations, then the educator is truly fostering the first foundational category in integrative SEL, the academic mindset.
A teacher that is really successful at integrating social, emotional, and academic learning recognizes that, one, learning is a social enterprise and you're in a room with lots of other people. So paying attention to the social interactions and deepening the connections between people and building friendships and relationships across classmates is really critical because you're all in there learning together. And then the second piece is connecting to each individual and understanding like what's their entry point into this. And the more you know your students as human beings, the more you can kind of help them make those connections.
These aligned SEL and academic objectives, the second category in integrated SEL instruction, commingle through group work, respectful debates, journaling, and lessons.
A math class, for example, that looks at fractions can be treated in a very conventional way, which just says these are numbers of a kind and they are parts of wholes and displayed geometrically and things like that. In a social emotional fashion, what you would do is you would tie that indeed to relevant topics to the learner themselves, because fractions incorporate divisions and distributions, and our youth around the nation, around the world even, know that some things are distributed fairly and unfairly. And so an understanding of mathematics from the context of what it means to share equally is rooted in some very specific actual lived problems and circumstances. So that kind of a lesson, rather than it simply being about numbers and symbols, becomes about actual lived and culturally relevant experience.
We've always known that relationships are key to helping kids feel comfortable and to achieve at school. It's not something that we do, it's part of who we are. We try to bring their lives to what they're learning, and I think that is something that kind of helps the trust, the respect, the emotional growth of students. There are times when they're sitting in circles and they're talking about something that maybe happened in history and the emotions that were going on in there. What do you think people were thinking? Why is it different now than it was then?
The third aspect of integrated SEL is the interactive pedagogy, or method of teaching. It allows for well-facilitated classroom discussions, student self-assessments, partner work, and student voice.
So if you were to walk into a classroom where SEL is integrated into the day, you would see experiences and lessons where students are interacting a lot with each other, that the student's voice is as present, if not more present, than the teacher's voice, that the students have opportunities to deeply reflect on the material, on their own social emotional competence, on ways in which the material relates to their personal lives. They'd have opportunities to reflect on the bigger experience and how that fits in. So they would be much more engaged in a deeply more personal way with each other and with the material that allows them to both process the material and to develop their own social emotional competence at the same time.
Integrated SEL is rooted in relationship, whether that's teacher to scholar or peer to peer. The modeled behavior speaks the loudest.
If you are struggling day in and day out, it does not matter how much planning and preparation you put in, okay? You have to make sure that you build the relationships with scholars. Any veteran you talk to, I don't care what business industry you're in, if you want successful people working with you and around you, you have to make sure you build those relationships. You have to communicate. The same thing goes for a classroom, okay? When you're leading that classroom, you have to make sure that you have that connection, that you're empathetic with the children.
I hope you liked the video. Now let's go ahead and continue our discussion on SEL. SEL advances educational equity and excellence through authentic school-family community relationships and partnership to establish some learning environments and experiences that focus on trust and a meaningful curriculum and instruction, and then evaluation of that. SEL can also help address various forms of inequity in schools and empower young people and adults to co-create an environment that they feel safe and believe it contributes to the community. So Did you know that the pilot's handbook of aeronautical knowledge has a whole chapter on decision making? And when I reviewed that chapter, I noticed that it had most of the Castle 5 competencies. And there's a risk assessment as well as checklist that the pilot had to complete to make sure that they were ready for a flight. And they had all the Castle 5 competencies in there. So let's take a look at how did you learn these 5 competencies of Castle. Because before we start teaching our students, we always have to self-reflect and see how did we learn. Is there something that we can replicate for our students? Is there something that's not in the students' environment that we could help bring into their lives to help them build these skills if they have some skills that are missing or there are some gaps? So let's take a look. Think about it for a few minutes. Here is the circle. And these are the 5 competencies, which are self-management, responsible decision making, relationship skills, social awareness, self-awareness. Now they are not in order, so we could start from anywhere or we can hop around. You don't build these skills progressively, but you build them sometimes all 5 skills in one activity or one experience of life. And there are multiple circles around this Castle 5, and our focus right now for this workshop is just going to be mostly classrooms. And as we get deeper into social emotional learning, we'll move into how to build school-wide competencies, how to build that with the families and communities. So, did you get a chance to reflect, or did I talk over your thinking? Let me give you a few seconds. Let me go ahead and share mine. So, a lot of my self-awareness was through personal reflection, but it wasn't in a vacuum or a void. It was through my interactions with my world. And then I learned how to self-manage through my interactions with my family, my neighbors, and church. And then I also made some responsible decision making through the same relationships. And I built my relationship skills through friends and then also through work. And also expanded my social awareness, learning about different cultures by traveling, which also included my interactions with my family. So I'm sure you might have had some similar experiences. Sometimes our students don't have all these different avenues to access social emotional experiences, and that's why they may come to you with some gaps. And our goal as educators is to help them build their skills and become competent in interacting with the world, with their peers, with the adults, and to be able to build self-confidence. Let's take a look at these competencies one by one. Let's start with self-awareness. It is the ability to understand one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior across contexts. Remember, the key word is understand one's own emotions. Let's move into some examples now. Self-awareness is also the ability to recognize one's strengths and limitations with a well-grounded sense of confidence and purpose. And so let's go over some examples. So let's take a look at the first one. Examining your bias and prejudice. This becomes our frame of reference to understand the world and everything that happens around us. Without reflecting on this part of who we are, it's very difficult to understand why and how we react to some of the things that happen around us. The other one is identifying personal, cultural, and linguistic assets. So this one here. And this also helps you build your toolkit on what you will need to help or support yourself and also interact with the world. The next one is being able to identify one's emotions. Another one is having a growth mindset. Something else to look into is building your personal and social identity, and also developing a sense of purpose. Linking feelings and thoughts and values also help with building your self-awareness. Together, it also builds your self-efficacy. And it helps you demonstrate honesty and integrity. So keep this in mind as we look into building social awareness. One absolutely great activity that you could do with students is the 40 developmental assets. I have provided you links for you on this slide, or actually on the last slide of this presentation. It is through the Search Institute, and the Institute has identified 40 supports and strengths that young people need to succeed. Half of these assets focus on social emotional strengths and values and commitments that are nurtured within young people. So the second half of this form that you see in front of you has those internal assets. There are some external assets that could also match social emotional learning, but this is the focus for SEL. I used to use this tool when I used to teach middle school, and I would do it within the first week of school with my students. It helped my students understand their areas of strengths and which areas they needed to develop further. And it also built a rapport between them and me, because it helped us have some commonality that we could discuss, and also something that I could keep in mind as I lesson planned and designed my units. So let's move into another competency, self-management. This is the ability to manage one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors effectively in different situations and to achieve goals and aspirations. So now we're taking a look at managing what we are aware of. So before we were understanding our emotions, and now it's to manage it. So let's take a look at some examples. Self-management includes the capacity to delay gratification, manage stress, and feel motivation and agency to accomplish personal and collective goals. And here are some examples. Identifying and using stress management strategies. That's not easy, and it comes with experience and learning some coping tools. Another one is showing the courage to take initiative and demonstrating personal and collective agency. As you see these young ducklings. And what is personal agency? It involves the participants' reflection on their academic competence, self-efficacy, and personal strengths and weaknesses. Another way to demonstrate self-management is exhibiting self-discipline as well as self-motivation. And these can be achieved through setting personal and collective goals, using planning and organizational skills, and definitely managing one's emotions. Before we move on to the next competency, which is responsible decision making, let's go
Every
ahead and watch a
child will
short
face
video.
innumerable decisions throughout their lives. Will they make constructive choices that will help them build a successful life? That will depend on their ability to analyze situations, understand ethical implications, and evaluate consequences. Their decisions will affect their own well-being and that of others.
I think for responsible decision making, what we're really talking about here is teaching kids to think through all the parts of a problem and really understand it in a deeper way, so that they're not making impulsive decisions, that they're thinking about, if I make this decision, what are the consequences of that decision? So we're actually trying to think through a few steps ahead. How will other people react to my decision to do X? That's actually involving your social awareness and your relationship skills as you're thinking through your responsible decision making.
When you're thinking about responsible decision making, we have to think too, as adults, how much do we help kids make decisions? We have a lot of kids in college and young adults, anxiety and depression's through the roof, and I think there's a lot of kids that turn into adults that aren't sure how to make a decision on their own. So the idea as teachers and parents of supporting our kids in decision making and also letting them deal with natural consequences of their decisions when we know it's not going to hurt them, of course. And again, it's case by case and it depends on age, but it's really important to think about us as scaffolding them, but we want them to be able to eventually make independent decisions that hopefully are the right ones for them.
Having conversations after they make their choice, why did you choose that? What could you have done differently? Was that the best choice? And really allowing them to construct their understanding or verbalize the way that they made that selection. Sometimes it may be because it was enticing, or because you thought it would be fun, or they thought it would have a certain outcome, and that may really give us some insight on how do we present choices? What choices can we present that in the end really gives us what we're looking for? Because choice allows growth and opportunity.
As we think about discipline or consequences, really having our young people think through what happened, why did I do what I did, how did that make others feel, and then what's appropriate for me to do now, both in terms of having a consequence, but also to repair the damage. So if a young child is in trouble for being disruptive in the classroom, we could just give them a timeout, or we could actually help them understand, why is that actually a problem? What is the teacher's experience like when she's trying to teach a lesson and you keep on being disruptive? How would you feel if you were trying to communicate to a group of 25 kids, but one student kept doing that? And what can we do to let that teacher know that we understand how she must feel and that we're sorry about that? They're much more likely to really reflect on that and not do it again, and to apologize appropriately, than had they just been sent out or lost recess or just excluded from instruction as a timeout. So it's really important for discipline that we give kids opportunities to analyze the situation, to reflect on the different perspectives, and to repair that damage, so that they're more likely to internalize the lessons that can be learned from these conflicts and not simply just repeat it again or just get angry.
Before we move into this competency, let's talk about some of the skills that we noticed in the video you just watched. So it seemed like students, with the help of their teacher, were building their self-management competency. I'm sure there are other skills, but we will circle back to this video after we review the remaining few. So let's move into the next one, and that is the responsible decision making. And what is it? It's the ability to make caring and constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions across diverse situations. Next, we'll take a look at some examples. Responsible decision-making also includes the ability to consider ethical standards and safety concerns and to evaluate the benefits and consequences of various actions for personal, social, and collective well-being. So let's take a look at some examples. Let's start with identifying solutions for personal and social problems. So that's one of the skills that you build through this competency. You also learn how to anticipate and evaluate the consequences of one's actions, as you can see in this image. And then you also learn how to recognize critical thinking skills and why they're useful both inside and outside of school. And you start reflecting on one's role to promote personal, family, and community well-being. So you move away from self and then you're connecting to the world around you. You demonstrate curiosity and an open-mindedness, and you learn how to make reasoned judgment after analyzing information, data, and facts. So you're not quick to judge, but you make informed decisions after reviewing and analyzing a lot of data. And then you also evaluate personal, interpersonal, community, and institutional impacts. So how does that impact you? And these questions continue to keep us engaged in this pursuit of responsible decision making. So let's move into the next competency, which is the relationship skills. It is the ability to establish and maintain healthy and supportive relationships and to effectively navigate settings with diverse individuals and groups. And this is something that we want to work on even as adults. A lot of these competency skills are some of the things that we are still working on and trying to improve our craft. Relationship skills include the capacity to communicate clearly, listen actively, cooperate, work collaboratively to problem solve, negotiate conflict constructively, navigate settings with differing social and cultural demands and opportunities, provide leadership, and seek or offer help when needed. So let's take a look at a few examples. We have a skill where you can show leadership in groups, as in the first example here. You can learn how to communicate effectively through this skill. You can demonstrate cultural competence and understand diversity. You seek or offer support and help when needed. Practice teamwork and collaborative problem solving. Build and develop positive relationships. Resolve conflicts constructively. Resist negative social pressure. And then stand up for the right of others. So the last competency we're going to take a look at is social awareness. It's the ability to understand the perspectives of and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds, cultures, and contexts. And we are now going to move into some examples. Social awareness includes the capacity to feel compassion for others, understand broader historical and social norms for behavior in different settings, and recognize family, school, and community resources and supports. Let's look at a few examples. So let's start with the first one, showing concern for the feelings of others, demonstrating empathy and compassion, and then taking others' perspectives, recognizing situational demands and opportunities, recognizing strengths in others, and understanding and expressing gratitude. The last couple are understanding the influences of the organizations and systems on behavior. This red-eye tree frog has incredible physical adaptations. And as individuals, we may not have physical adaptations, but we do learn how to adapt to our surrounding systems or vice versa. And then the last one is being able to look at diverse social norms. This is the last one here. Using service learning as a project to help with the social emotional learning is very useful because you'd be able to address all 5 competencies. Because in a project, students make decisions on where, when, how, and what. They enhance their relationship skills by working as a team and trying to get to know the community and what can help beautify it, as in the case of painting a mural where walls are graffitied, like the video example you just saw. And the project will also help them influence the neighborhood in a positive way, learning to socially connect with each other and the community. This ends the part 1 of our social emotional learning series, and here are a list of sources.